Hello, everyone. This is the first study question review video. Um, this is something that I do for every set of study questions, both because it's an online course and you have to do something, but also because since you'll be tested on this material and the exam questions will be based upon study questions, I thought it would be a responsible thing to do to help you prepared for the reading exams for this course. So I would encourage you to watch these videos. I think that'll help quite a bit. That being said, the first set of study questions, most of this is really very open ended. And I just want to give you a sense of what I'm encouraging you to think about and what sort of answers perhaps I was looking for. Not really, because so much of it is a matter of opinion. For instance, question one, this text starts with in the beginning. And my question is, in the beginning of what? This is one of the things that's always struck me about these famous lines. The first line of the Bible, first line of the book of Genesis is that there is a. It's problematic because we know what it means to say in the beginning of the week, in the beginning of the day, in the beginning of the semester, the beginning of the century, because all those things are limited. Right? But in the beginning of all things, beginning of creation, beginning of everything. It's a typical what the philosophers call a metaphysical statement. If I say that this is the beginning of the week, I can verify that by looking at a calendar. But if I say in the beginning of everything, there's no way to experience that. It's a metaphysical statement in the sense that it's about something that happened that couldn't possibly have been observed or experienced by a human being. So it's got these great implications, and it's paradoxical too. To say in the beginning, well, the beginning of everything, would you just trying to raise that issue there? And also, question two, in terms of this text, how do you imagine God? Well, I mean, that's obviously quite personal. How do you imagine God? I mean, a force, a person? Is God? Does God have a body? I guess that's not supposed to be right. Is God some kind of all-powerful being that isn't located in time or space? I mean, all sorts of theological questions, are stimulated by reading of this text. Number three, would you characterize this text as a story, as a literal description of creation? Both. Why? I mean, just getting people to think about it, really come out with how do you approach a text like this? If you're not a religious person, I think you must approach it as a mere story. If you're not Christian or Jewish or Muslim, my understanding is that Islam accepts to some degree the legitimacy of the Old Testament as being scripture. If you're not a follower of any of those religions, then I suppose you regard it as a story. And even if you are, there are plenty of Christians, Jews, and Muslims who are believing people in those religions, but would regard these texts pretty much as stories. I mean, but there are people who would say, no, this is literal. This is meant to be taken literally. Right? And maybe you can see it as both. I don't know. I'm just trying to raise those questions of how we are supposed to fundamentally approach the text. Number four, the text says that God created man in his own image. What does that mean? Is it metaphorical? Is it literal? Does it mean that we look like God? Does it mean that we just have certain godlike features, which has been suggested by theologians, like we are godlike insofar as we have reason, capacity to think, and we have free will? What does that mean? Number five, God tells the first man and woman that they will have, quote, dominion over all the earth. What does that mean? My understanding of dominion is not just power, it's mastery. Somebody who has dominion over something has a legitimate right to rule over it. Not just power, but also legitimate power. And to say that human beings have dominion over the earth is to say that human beings were meant to rule over the earth. A lot of people, I think that was in human history until fairly recently, it's sort of taken for granted that human beings, well, of course we do. But especially environmentalists have questioned the wisdom of human beings with regard to the earth and the question of whether they should really think of themselves as being the natural masters of the earth. Maybe that's just all kind of a form of craziness. I don't know. Or maybe not. Question 6. Genesis 2 tells again of the creation of human beings. How does it differ from the creation story from Genesis 1? Well, you'll remember that in Genesis 1, it just says God created human beings, male and female. He created them. Whereas in Genesis 2, he creates the first man and then creates the first woman from the man. Do you think these two differences are important? Why or why not? Some people have suggested that they are. That is, that the first creation stories, well, Jesus created people. And the second one, he created a man and then he created a woman for the man. So, I mean, that's an interpretation. Number 7, the serpent. This is first man and the woman in the Garden of Eden, tells the first woman, Eve, that if she and the first man eat of the fruit of the forbidden tree, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. What did he mean by this? Well, it's a good question. Remember, the tree that they eat the fruit from, the forbidden fruit, is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So presumably, their eyes are opened in the sense that they now know good and evil. They have a moral sense. They can see the difference between right and wrong, whereas before they couldn't. And the serpent says, "Ye shall be as gods, therefore, knowing good and evil." Somehow that capacity to tell good from evil, to have some sense of morality, puts you close, makes you like God, which is quite an interesting idea. Finally, number 8, what do you think of the punishments that God metes out when he discovers the first man and woman have eaten the fruit of the tree? I don't know what you think of them, but quite striking. The man's punishment is basically that he has to work, and maybe that he's going to die. From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. But the one that's clear is that life is not going to be easy. Life is going to be hard. You will now earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. This curse of labor and work. Human beings will now have to work to survive, whereas before it was not necessary. And then the punishments to the woman, that she's going to bear children in pain, the pains of childbirth. Yet her desire shall be for her husband, and he shall rule over you, which is what it says. So what do you think of that? I don't know, man. It's pretty harsh. Whether that is an endorsement of patriarchy, male dominance, and dominating women, I don't know, but it does say that. So pretty harsh punishments and disturbing punishments, I